I would like to reaffirm what was said by Minister of Finance. We stand for the competition. I fully agree with that. And I will have to state that I will have to reiterate what they have already said. They have already mentioned the most interesting things. But what I'm going to say is also important because it is going to mean that we have a consensus in our economic policy between the government, the presidential office, the central bank. Regions of the Russian Federation are not represented here, but let me assure you that we are working in close contact with them, with the business. And in general, we have a high level of solidarity and efficiency. At the outset, I would like to welcome the guests and participants of the plenary session of the International Russia Calling Forum. Good afternoon. It has become a good tradition that this event brings together entrepreneurs and investors from dozens of countries of the world for meaningful discussions on issues that pose interest for the business and directly impact the development of trade and investment ties of Russia with foreign countries. I know that in the focus of your attention are the main trends, both in the global economy, on the world markets, and in the Russian economy. The specific tasks that we set for ourselves in order to promote the business initiatives in our country and in order to launch new and promising projects. Hence, for the expanding of opportunities for profitable investment in most different fields. Those are the topics I would like to briefly address in my remarks. As you know well, the world of today is characterized by high turbulence that was largely provoked by non-competitive struggle on the part of some Western countries. Using their monopoly on certain markets in the field of finance, they impose illegitimate unilateral restrictions and thus seek to exert pressure on sovereign states pursuing independent policy. In fact, Western countries want to eliminate rivals and preserve their former privileges, that very waning monopoly in the changing world of today. Well, you know, in the post-Soviet times, we used to say, and that is, our Western then partners taught us all difficulties should be overcome not by administrative measures, but with market measures. And restrictions are an attempt to maintain the administrative ways to govern the economy. It's not a successful or effective attitude. Definitely, Russia feels such an external pressure, but our country is up to these challenges. We will continue to pursue a sovereign economic policy and act on a global arena in accordance with our own national interests and the needs of domestic business and our citizens. We will fulfill our obligations to foreign counterparts and expand cooperation with those countries who are interested. As I said before, such countries that act rationally and pragmatically constitute an absolute majority. Over the past 3 years, we significantly enhanced the volumes of trade with them. I'm talking primarily about our key partners, that is China and India, with whom we have a long history of friendship and strategic cooperation. I know that in this hall there are many representatives of Chinese and Indian delegations. Let me stress, we are willing to give a new quality to our cooperation with the People's Republic of China and the Republic of India and enhance its technological track. Many joint projects in energy, industry, space, agriculture, and so on serve exactly this goal. As regards the economic agenda, we have established a meaningful dialogue with President of the People's Republic of China, His Excellency Mr. Xi Jinping. We are going to address these very topics in detail with His Excellency Prime Minister Narendra Modi during my upcoming visit to India. including the increase of import of Indian goods to our market. Definitely at this session, we have addressed the import element of our strategy. And this definitely belongs primarily to, concerns primarily India, as we talk about issues related to the trade balance. I'll reiterate, Russia is open for cooperation with foreign business, both in the field of trade and in the real sector and on the stock market. Our country offers big opportunities to entrepreneurs and investors, and stability of major macroeconomic indicators guarantees the stability of such work. For example, we have the unemployment level at a record level of 2.2%. Well, probably I'll have to reiterate what was definitely already mentioned here today. 2.2%, that was the level of unemployment in September, and it is low not only for Russia, but also for most large economies of the world. The situation with the public finance remains stable. We have taken timely decisions concerning both the income and the expenditures of federal budget. At the same time, we in full measure financed the key priorities. Those are social obligations, defense and national security, as well as our tasks related to the achievement of national development goals. The budget for the upcoming 3 years was designed so as to decrease the impact of foreign risks and enhance the share of non-oil and gas income, and it observes the budget rule and demonstrates a moderate budget deficit. Well, look at some countries. The European Union, for example, we plan 1.2% for the coming years. Let me stress, you've definitely already mentioned the sovereign debt of Russia. It is at less than 20% of GDP, and it's one of the lowest indicators in the world. We continue to pursue a balanced and responsible budgetary policy. We take consistent decisions as regards monetary policy, and we managed to achieve a slowdown in inflation. Let me stress, it was a key achievement of this year, while in March we had a double-digit inflation. Now inflation is less than 7% year-to-year, and by the end of December it is estimated to be at less than 6%. That is lower than was forecast by the government and central bank. Our experts now calculate, taking into account various parameters, but in general it looks as I have just said, and we hope this trend will maintain. At the same time, there is the slowdown in economic growth over the past 9 months. The GDP of Russia has grown by 1%. In the third quarter, the growth of GDP was at 0.6%. Year to year, we estimate the GDP to be at the level of 0.5 to 1%. That's what we expect when the central bank set the key rate. At the same time, there are certain imbalances. In some industries, the output in this year not only didn't increase, but decreased. Are we satisfied with such trends? No. I'll remind you that in December, the government and central bank were given principled tasks, namely to ensure a transition to a balanced growth model, to preserve a low unemployment level and a low inflation level, and at the same time to effect structural transitions and changes in the economy with the goal to reduce the share of grey and black market and enhance its compatibility. We'll discuss it in more detail in 1 week at the session of the Council on Strategic Development and National Projects. Primarily, we should seek a great investment growth and invest in the development of production and services. We need to launch new projects in industry, agriculture, infrastructure, high-tech, tourism, and so on. Over the past 3 years, investments were growing at a very high rate. In 2022, they were at a level of 6.7%, 2023 at a level of 9.8%. In 2024, the growth of investment was at 7.4%. This year, the growth is more moderate, but in general, it remains positive growth. What's the main reason? In some economic sectors, there was a decrease in the profits of the companies. That is, they have fewer funds for investment, fewer own funds for investment, and the price of bank loans, the domestic business used to finance its projects, objectively grew. Well, over the past years, our financial sector managed to readjust its work. It substituted the unreliable foreign sources of investment with the domestic ones. As a result, the foreign debt of domestic companies in the field of the real sector was reduced twice. Well, there were real worries at the first stage, but was our industry and our business up to it? Yes, they were. Thanks to the timely regulatory actions and the resilience that was accumulated, the Russian banking sector is working in a stable manner. In 2022, we had a close to zero financial result. The profit was at about 200 billion rubles. In 2023, it was at 3.2 trillion rubles. In 2024, at 3.8 trillion rubles. And according to the estimates of the Bank of Russia, in 2025, the banking sector will have a profit of 3.2 to 3.5 trillion rubles.
I'm convinced that it's necessary to build up the contribution of the banking sector to the development of national economy, our territories, cities and towns, to increase the efficiency, the effect for the real production from the use of credit resources. At the same time, it's very important so that the funds of the banks, their revenues, citizens' savings, the savings of the companies, were used to implement business ideas not only in big cities and in the business center, life centers, but everywhere in all the regions of our country. That is why every entity of the Federation has already introduced a regional investment standard. At the regional level, there are development agencies being launched. They provide support for investors. They suggest how to register lands, how to obtain support mechanisms, how to solve infrastructure issues. But very often, big projects, given the scale of implementation, they go beyond specific region. The same goes for in foreign investment. Maybe a federal view would be useful, where our foreign partners could implement this or that project, and what federal support measures they could use. For such initiatives, I propose to create a unified ecosystem of investment support, so that the entrepreneurs or companies could receive professional consultations and help through the whole life cycle of their project, from the idea to implementation. And I propose to create such an ecosystem on the basis of a web.rf cooperation with the participation of the Ministry of Economic Development. Going further, it's necessary to strengthen the role of the stock market as the source of funds for investment, given that the interests of the citizens and institutional investors to our stock markets is at a high level. In the middle of this year, speaking about Moscow Stock Exchange, more than 37 clients were registered. I'm speaking about individuals. It's almost half of the economically active population of our country. The total value of their assets exceeded 11 trillion rubles. Speaking about the number of legal entities using broker services, during the year, their number increased by a third, up to 50,000, and the volume of their portfolios exceeded 15 trillion rubles. Yes, current economic situation reflects on the Russian stock market. Its capitalization has reduced a little and now stands at around 23% of the GDP. This year, only 3 companies listed their shares for the first time, including our leading development institute in the sphere of housing, Dom.rf Corporation. And I congratulate you on that. I know that your team and you made a lot for this, and it was a successful work. It is obvious that the Russian stock market has room for growth, for new offerings. We need additional efforts to increase its capitalization so that the potential of the stock market would be used in the interests of the whole country. That is why I think what I suppose possible to suggest is that to invest in bonds and shares of funds. But increasing debt is not the only instrument to expand productions and launch investment projects. For long-term development, it's also important to attract share capital. In order to intensify this work, I ask the government in the nearest future to organize a program of initial and secondary public offerings for the companies with the public ownership. At the ministries, I ask to outline sectoral plans for big issues to get listed. Of course, providing specific effective incentives for business that offers its shares, including coordination with the existing support measures with the companies going public. I'll give a good example about this. If a borrower of an industrial development fund conducts an initial public offering, so-called IPO, they can count on a lower rate for a loan. Second, we need to increase the effectiveness and transparency of joint stock companies' management, so that their shareholders were sure of reliability of their investment and of receiving income. I know that the Bank of Russia, together with the Moscow Stock Exchange, with the support of the Minister of Finance, launched a program of creating shareholder value. It is based on similar experience of Asian countries. The program focuses on publishing corporate indicators that are significant indicators for investors, including net assets, dividend yield, forecasts, and development plans, and so forth. The participants of the program of creating shareholder value will form the pool of the companies that will become the so-called reference point for other Russian issuers, the quality mark for investors. And I ask the government until the end of the next year to ensure the joining this program of the biggest joint stock companies with public ownership, as well as to coordinate the work conditions, incentives for the leadership with the increased shareholder value. Of course, we need to be very accurate. I understand that in the modern conditions, we need to see the real situation in which our state is right now. We need to understand the complexities before our state, but we need to follow this path. And the third, finally, it's important to continue raising attractiveness of the capital market, strengthen the trust of the investors, and to ensure the inflow of funds. More countries join the program of long-term savings that serve as an important source of long-term investment. We have already concluded more than 8 million such agreements, amounting to almost 560 billion rubles. Last year, during this forum, I gave an instruction to further stimulate the so-called family savings. I'll remind what I'm talking about. If parents open in favor of their kids a product of long-term savings, add funds to it, they can obtain a tax deduction for personal income tax. The size of the deduction will be based on the sum of real contribution, up to 500,000 rubles for every parent. It means that the highest possible sum for a family to obtain a deduction will be 1 million rubles, and the necessary changes to the legislation have already been made. Moreover, there are preferences for employers that co-finance savings of their employees in long-term savings program. They'll come into force since September the 1st next year. We'll see how these innovations will work out, how business and citizens will assess their effectiveness, and after that, we'll fine-tune these measures or launch additional mechanisms to develop our stock market. Distinguished friends, feedback, constant dialogue with business community and investors are the key condition for improving business climate, for strengthening investment dynamics as the guarantee of confident long-term economic growth. It is important to take into account opinions, proposals of national business and our foreign partners, as well as the best foreign practices. We also need to assess our own experience to solve tasks and problems that our business considers to be of paramount importance. It is essential that the forum, Russia Calling, gives an excellent opportunity to conduct open, constructive discussion on all these issues. I know that you have a very active discussion, and I'm sure that it's very substantive and very useful. I would like to thank you. Well, of course, I'm speaking to our foreign friends and partners. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing interest to our work, and I wish you all the best. Thank you for your attention.